From the bayous in Louisiana to the timber country up north, you'll find them out on the trapline, chasing furs to put up on the board, mixing up another batch of that magical stuff, chilling around the fire after the show. Hey, it's Sarah and Jeff, and maybe a guest on the Trapping Radio 2.0.
All right, well, welcome to Trapping Radio. I am here in North Carolina with Tommy Bryant, and we have a special interview tonight. Tommy's going to kind of moderate this, and he's going to introduce this person, and then we'll just kind of go from there. We're going to have a nice little chat about this person. He is well known in the industry and has done a lot of things over the years. And I haven't had the opportunity to sit down with him other than seeing him here and there at conventions. So I'm really excited for this interview too. And so anyway, I'll let Tommy take it over from here.
Good evening, everybody. We've got the opportunity I've had the opportunity to trap with this person the last few years. He's come down. A lot of you know him from one of the conventions that he runs in the Northeast New England Trapper Weekend. And that's Neil Olson. We have him here doing an interview. We're going to kind of go through his story, per se, and his life, and kind of get everybody up to speed. So if you hadn't had a chance, like me, to sit down with him for weeks on end, we talk about a lot of different things while he's down here on the trap line. I hear a lot of stories. We talk on the phone a lot, so I hear a lot of stuff that goes on that not the average person gets to hear. So I figured it would be a great interview for someone who would like to get to know him a little bit better than just the comedian that he is at a convention. So Neil, how have you been?
Been really fine. Today's the first day I was set a few traps in a while, and I feel alive.
I understand. So one of the things that I like in interviews are I want to know the person from start to finish. What, as far as trapping goes, when did you get started into trapping, and what is your best memory or first memory of trapping?
Well, I got introduced to trapping in two ways. My father had done a little bit. My father was the type of a man that would take me out on the trap line and truck me around, so to speak, no pun intended. And I have always thought, and I didn't, at that time I was too young to appreciate it maybe, but one of the best combinations is a father and a son, or a father or mother and a daughter, or vice versa, trapping together, because it's just something special that you participate in. One of the other things that happened when I was a youth, I went to a place called Gould Academy, and believe it or not, back then, there was a teacher that had a trapping course. And he taught trapping, and think about that compared to today, where it was a school that was teaching trapping. And that was a great way to learn too.
So did your dad trap?
He did a little bit, but I bring up my father because it's one of the hurdles a young person faces today. He has to have a lot of trapper courses out there that you have to take. Your parents have to be all in too to take you to these courses, and then much before you get your driver's license, you either have to have a walking trap line or a driving trap line. And I guess the punchline for me is your parents or someone that you know or in the family has to be in there with you and back you up and help you along the way.
All right. So as far as trapping goes, what was the first animal you remember catching?
Well, that's one of my favorite questions to ask other people, because I think everybody remembers their first animal they ever caught. And mine was a muskrat and a #1 long spring, and I could visually still see him. And I remember as a kid young man that the neighbor's boy caught an ermine, a weasel. And I was so jealous, I didn't even want to talk to him because, you caught a weasel. The next thing I know, another young boy caught a mink. And I was beyond talking then. I was just, the old male ego was really out there.
You had to get out there.
Yeah.
So at what age was this, would you say?
When I really started, around 11 or 12. And back then, the Androscoggin River is, back where I lived, muskrats were everywhere. And they were enough muskrats so that you didn't really have to know what you were doing. You had to go out and set a trap, and back then, and I don't mind saying it because I call it evolution of a trapper. You could miss 5 and then catch one, and little by little you learn what to do and what not to do. But it was just the excitement. It was like waiting for Christmas to get there to see if you had something or if you didn't. And I used to use a lot of wire. Muskrat would get caught and go out in the water and you'd pull it in, and just the excitement, the adrenaline of thinking you've got something.
So at that age, were you catching stuff just to be catching it, or were you actually able to sell it at that age?
You could absolutely sell it at that age, but I know a few, and I've been with 3 of them today. Money matters, money is important, but there are other things that are just as important. The camaraderie we had today, was fantastic. Memories is one of the other reasons why you trap. It's it's an inborn instinct for man to go out and want to harvest animals. So.
Yeah. Do you remember the first animal you sold?
Yeah, I've got. Yes, I'm going to say animal. I'm going to say animals.
Yeah.
There's a little story behind this one.
Okay.
I took some muskrats over to a gentleman named Merritt Kimball, who's now passed away. And he was the king of fur buyers at that time. And he looked at a few of them, and then he said, "Neil, how many do you have?" And I said, 300. And he paid me for them. And the next year when I walked into his place, the first thing out of his mouth was $298. In other words, I might have exaggerated 2 by 2, or I couldn't count it those days. I've been instructed not to tell too many jokes here, but one of my favorite jokes is the best 4 years of my life was 3rd grade. So, to be a trapper, that's what I love about being a trapper. Is
So
you don't have to be a rocket scientist to participate.
at some point, I remember hearing a story that you told me about. And it kind of goes into what you were just talking about with the sale of the kid that had the fur for sale, and the guy told him it was something about the price or whatever, and how it devastated the kid. You told me a story about that. I don't know if you remember that part of it or not, and it might come up later in this interview. So,
Well, a lot of country fur buyers are what really get kids strapping because they show them interest, they show them how to do it, and you're right. I've known fur buyers that did it the other way. Actually gave kids more money for their fur than they were hoping to get, just because it gave them an incentive to go out and trap. One of the incentives I loved about kids, or even anybody, I think that's some ways the way work ought to be today. If you catch 1 muskrat, you get paid for 1 muskrat. Guess what? If you catch 2 muskrats, you get paid for 2 and 3 and on and on and on.
So what your earliest reflection, as far as if you think back to selling fur, what year do you remember selling fur, and what was that fur going for at the time, if you remember?
Well, back when I first started selling fur, muskrats were bringing about $2, $2.25. The oddball thing about that is that was, and a little bit of a guess, that was 50 years ago. Guess what they're bringing today? $2, $2.25.
Yeah, I see that. So progression. So you're trapping at 11 and 12 years old. you've caught your first few animals. At what point did you have a full-time job when you were coming up, or did you? How was your balance with trapping and a job side as you grew out of the home?
I had in a roundabout way, I had a one-track mind, but it was actually a two-track mind. My goals was to play baseball and be a professional trapper. And because of the baseball thing, I got scholarships to go to college, which I did. And then I found out my ability might not have been what it should have been. Not to say a pun, but I kind of struck out. And I'd always loved trapping too. And I also found out that baseball, if you're just so good, you can only go so far in the game. And I'm not going to say they don't let you play the game anymore, because you can play for the fun of it. But the great thing about trapping is, as long as you want to trap or play, you can continue to do it. And I've actually done it now for the last 54 years. It's been an obsession.
So when you were late teenagers, early 20s, you were playing baseball, you were trapping on the side. Was there anything else going on at that time?
Well, there's things called girls going on. You know.
They tend to show up at some point.
Yes. And then I met my wife at a baseball party. And
At what age was that?
I was around 20,
Okay.
give or take a year or two. I don't know how much we're supposed to get into that type of thing, but, you know, the baseball thing kind of disappeared. We said we're going to go to Maine for a short time and live. We've been up there now for over 50 years. She still holds that against me. You lied to me.
So when you're talking her into going to Maine and living, what were you talking her job statuses and stuff like that? What was going on at that time? Were you just going there to trap, or was it other reasons to go to Maine?
You know, I don't know. A lot of people go through this stage where they really don't know for sure what they want to do. Mm-hmm. And that was me. I started logging in the woods with my father just because it was a job. And I was trapping a little bit at the time. And the trapping, love of the game, I call it, had never really disappeared. So I started to do more and more of it. Evolution, I call it, but I think at the beginning there was a lot of people when the prices were really down. I know I made the commitment to really trap hard, and working for my father, I was able to do this. I said, I'm taking the fall off, in the winter I'm going to go trapping. I made like $75 a week back then, and I think a lot of people at that point in time actually, like I said, felt sorry for me. Once again, I don't know how much we're supposed to talk about our lives, but the thing I really loved back then was the challenge of trapping. And the only way I can describe it is, I used to start saving my money on Monday so I'd have enough money to buy a six-pack on Sunday. And you know what? That challenge itself of just, I think sometimes we have more fun with the hunt than we do I don't want to say the kill, but the harvest. But
the climb is better than the end of the mountain.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get to
No, you're fine. You're fine. In fact, this is what we want. So you moved to Maine. You're logging parts of the year. You're trapping parts of the year. What is your at that time frame as far as years go? What years are these roughly? Are we talking 70s, 60s, 80s?
Well, I'm not exactly a mathematician, but I'm 77 years old. And now, yes, I was in my early 20s, 22, 23, 24.
So we're talking about early 70s, mid 70s.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's when you moved to Maine. What was your paycheck like trapping, and what were you trapping and selling to make a paycheck versus your logging check?
Well, back then they used to pay a bounty on bobcats of $15 a piece, and then you turn in the tail. So I pursued bobcats quite a bit, and like we had talked about a little bit, muskrats. Muskrats were very, very plentiful on the Androscoggin River back then. And even though I was a novice, you could go out and catch 200, 300, 400 muskrats without any problem at all. So that was kind of the beginning. And you would mention your first catch. I think everybody remembers their first catch. Some people can each actually remember their first catch of each and every animal. That I don't really remember, but I do remember my first catch was a muskrat. And the oddball thing is not oddball thing, but I can still see it in my mind. I can sit right at the kitchen table. I can still see that little.
Was anybody with you when you caught that first muskrat? Was your father with you, or were you by yourself?
Actually, I was by myself. I don't know, once again, I don't know how many stories you're supposed to tell, but I teamed up with another young man trapping, and we were obsessed with it. And one night we didn't come home till about 11 o'clock at night, and I don't remember exactly how old we were. But there was a little country store, and we stopped in there before we went home, and the lady says, "They found you." What do you mean they found me? Oh, there's a whole crew out there looking for you because you hadn't come home, and you're down there by the river, and you're young boys. That was actually before. I'm turning the clock way back now when we were really young. But.
So you had mentioned that before you had caught that first muskrat, your other friends, other kids that you knew, they had caught their first weasel, they had caught their first mink, and you were after the whatever your first animal was. Did you keep up with those boys, or did you become friends with them, or did you kind of trap together in that same area, or were they your competitors, or?
Well, let's set the score straight right now. They were just lucky.
Oh, okay.
No. I mean, they wound up being childhood friends, and they still are to this day.
Do they still trap?
Nope, neither one of them do. No, they don't. But at 77 years of age, I have friends that no longer are walking on top of the ground. So it's.
When you got to sorry, I don't mean to take
No,
over.
you're fine.
When you had got to the point where you were a better trapper and you were, like you were talking about, you were logging and trapping, what are some of the challenges that you remember going through or facing at that time as far as trapping goes? Were you struggling with
Trying to balance everything.
that, or just, were you struggling with the equipment? Were you trying to figure things out? I mean, you didn't have the internet or social media. Were you going through, how were you finding your information to overcome your challenges?
Well, that's a very, very good conversation to have. My one battle was going to work logging, knowing that I would prefer to be home in the woods trapping. And little by little, the trapping urge overcame the logging urge and making money. One of the speeches I always make to young people, and I just made one to a young man, was you have to figure out a way today if you want to trap. You have to have two things. You have to have a wife that allows you to do it. You have to have a job that allows you to do it. And at today's fur prices, that's kind of a hard thing to do. Not to change the subject about me, but this young man is going to school to be an electrician. I told him, you go to school and become an electrician and then work for yourself. And that way you'll be able to find the time to go trapping when you want to go. Mm-hmm. So and the battle was, the funny part about it is when you say the battle, I call it evolution. At the beginning, when I first started trapping, people were sorry for me. And then the market, little by little, got better. And almost to the point where people were not only not jealous anymore, but they were, they became jealous of what I was doing. And about that point in time, I took some fur to a local country fur buyer. And I never forget that day. It was when I wanted, at the time, and it was a lot of money at the time, I wanted $400 for my fur. And right off quick, he offered me $320. And there were other people in the room, and I saw him look around the room and wink at them. which was kind of a smirky way, I thought. Maybe I don't know how to word that one. And all of a sudden he turned around with me and says, "Split the difference with you," which he did. And for whatever reason, on the way home, I got thinking about that, and I don't know why it hit me, but I said, I'm going to go home and start making a sign. "I now buy fur," and I put it on the side of my garage. I had no idea where I was going to sell it. I had no idea what I was doing. What I didn't realize at the time, though, was I had hit the nail on the head where the market just instantly started to get better and better, and it made me look good because I was paying more money than some of the other fur buyers, and by getting a higher price, that ate up a lot of my mistakes. I remember buying, one of the first things I bought was a Fisher cat that was quite damaged. And I took that back over to my competitor, and he was very good at the word game. And he had found out I had bought a fur buyer's license, and I said, "Well, how much is this worth?" And he says, "You're a fur buyer now. You're supposed to know what it's worth." And I lost a little bit of money on that, but
So at what age did you start buying fur?
about 24, 25 years old. That's a little bit of a guess too.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
I'm trying to timeline this thing as we go forward. Now, it's going back, kind of jumping back to the side of the trapping side, and I know you talk about your first catches and different things, and you can't remember them. I remember seeing a book that you had that you pulled out when you were here trapping last time, and we hadn't started checking traps that you set yet. So we hadn't seen it yet, but you have a book dated back some 40 or 50 years, and you have every catch wrote down in this book by day, by month, by year, and you have them all totaled out. So you can, if you go back and say how many gray foxes you've caught in your lifetime, or how many red foxes you've caught in your lifetime, you could actually go back in this logbook and find out all that details. What gave you the idea of starting to do that?
Oh, that's a simple answer, because trying and wanting to be a baseball player, baseball is all about statistics. And I started keeping records in 1973 of what I caught. So, then once again, I don't know what I'm supposed to say and what I'm not supposed to say, but I think my records are better than the ones I kept for the IRS.
I think the IRS ones kind of change as needed.
Well, what's funny about keeping records is, being an older man now, it gives me an incentive to go out and trap some more. Because I know, I can't say exactly what I've caught because subject to the human error, but it's pretty darn close. Writing it down every day. Monetarily right now, it's not an incentive to go out there in some ways, but it's a monetary incentive, not a monetary incentive, but an incentive for me to. I always said you catch an animal, let's just use beavers. You catch beaver one at a time. And I want to go and catch another one. And I want to go catch another one after that. I think I already said it once, but the young man that catches one muskrat gets paid for one. If he catches two, he gets paid for two.
That's a very good point. So at 24, 25 years old, you're buying fur. You're logging on the side still, and you're trapping. So you're doing all this, balancing a family. At what age do kids come into play?
Well, didn't take too long for those kids to show up. How that happened, I don't know, but which is another bad joke. But anyway, and you know what? That puts a little bit more of a strain on you, because you have to support them. My wife worked at the same time. But the kids, of course, can not use up time. That isn't the right way to word it. But they make your life a lot more fun and interesting. And I used to get them to go trapping with me. And we used to trap muskrats right behind the house. And they found out years later that I used to let them set their own traps. Some people won't like this, but I used to put some of mine in their traps so that they would think they caught some and then pay them for it. And somehow they found out years later and got mad at me for doing that.
No,
I still ain't figured that one out yet.
That's what keeps kids motivated now. Everybody talks about that with kids and getting them into trapping, and everybody knows that certain animals are harder to trap than others based off their quantity and where you're at and different things like that. So they start kids off on things like raccoons and muskrats if they've got a good population and things like that, because those are easier to catch. You can catch them in numbers quicker, and it gives the kids incentive, and they see the reward. They set the trap, they caught the animal, they got the reward. It just pushes them to keep going further. Same way with any other sport or any other thing they do. If they see success, they want to continue it. I think that's a great thing with the kids, putting stuff in the trap, because if a lot more people did that, I think you could really see the benefit in the long run.
One thing that trapping teaches kids or anybody is a work ethic. You know, you go out there and trap, and you have another. That's my phone.
No, you're fine.
It's a responsibility, because you have to go back and check a trap after you have set it. Versus hunting, you come home and you put the gun in the case, you put the fish pole or the golf clubs, you put them in the golf, put them away. Whereas traps, like I said, you've got a responsibility out there.
Absolutely.
It's an ethical thing.
And a lot of people don't realize the deal with trapping, and you set the trap, and like you said, you have to go back and check it. You can't decide tomorrow morning and it's raining outside that you don't want to go check traps, or it's cold outside, there's snow on the ground and you don't want to go check traps. Whereas other things like fishing and hunting, you can make that decision at the last minute, decide, the weather's bad, or there's snow on the ground, or it's cold, or whatever it may be. You can
pause it too.
That's fine. But if you're doing these other things, you can decide that I don't want to do it today, so I'm going to wait until tomorrow. Well, trapping, you can't do that. It's like you said, it's a commitment. It does instill work ethic in a lot of people, and trapping's one of those things that the better your work ethic, the more successful you are.
No question about that. It's one of the things people don't teach their kids now is how to work, responsibility, chores. It's almost handed to them. And back in those days, when you learn how to trap by yourself, trial and error, I think you appreciate it more as a trapper. I've heard that over and over again, where I taught myself, and you could see the pride in a person that did that. Whereas now with YouTube and other avenues, you can punch the phone and almost learn how to do anything. In some ways, it almost became too simple to learn. But then after you've seen it or gone to trappers conventions and watched demonstrations, you still have to go out and put it in practice. So
absolutely.
So,
all right. So we're growing up. We done went through the kid stage. We got kids running around. At what point did the logging stop? What point was there ever a point where you were a trapper, fur buyer solely, or was there always something on the back burner as a supplemental type income?
Well, when I learned about buying fur, and the market was treating me quite good, because there was a 5 or 6 year span where prices just kept getting higher and higher and higher. And I never practiced it. It was never a plan. That practice is not the right word. It was never a plan, but it got to the point where I could make about 10% on the fur that I bought. And like I said, it was never a plan, but it always seemed to revolve back to that. And at the peak of my buying, and I can't tell you exactly what year that is either, but I can, that's why I'm glad I kept records on trapping, because we were talking about what I caught. Yes, I could, but fur buying, I didn't do that. But anyway, my point is, it all revolved around to the fact I could make about 10% from the fur that I bought. And back when female fishes got to be $200 and a quarter, or $100 for the males, 100 and a quarter, 10% of that was a pretty good little paycheck. And when beavers averaged $30, 10% of that was, and you take the mink that were $40, $50, 10% of that. And you take the raccoons that got $30, $40 was 10% of that.
So I'm assuming we're talking late 70s, early 80s, right around the fur boom time frame. What was it like going into the fallout of the fur after you've become accustomed to making this money, buying fur, trapping fur, doing things like this, and then the fallout on the fur side in the early 80s? Do you remember that or have any?
Oh, absolutely. If you're a fur buyer, you can't help but remember that. One of my plans, and I was pretty darn good at it, was I'm not going to buy it unless I have a home for it. I'm not going to buy it unless I know what I can get for it. And I was pretty successful in that. Three things happened. I ran into a gentleman named Ken Gershik, and in plain language, he was a great person to give me advice, and he had something at that point in time that I didn't. It was called money. So as the prices went up, and we kind of learned the business together, let's say, and fisher cats, like I said, got to be about 2 and a quarter for the females. And back then, there was a lot of fur around to buy. And I love statistics. And I compare what I used to buy compared to what we catch in the state of Maine now. And I used to buy 3 times as much fur as the whole state catches now. And I hate to almost say that because it doesn't seem possible. It's just like looking back on my records of fur that I've caught. I am so glad I did that, because I honestly wouldn't have believed the numbers, and I wouldn't have known them. But at one point in time, my money man, I called him, I owed him in excess of $500,000.
Oh, wow.
So back in those days, just take the math, simple math right there. $500,000 is $50,000 a year. Now this is only covering 6 months out of the year, so if I wanted to supplement my income with another job or whatnot, I could. And at the peak, it actually went to, the amount of fur that I was buying was closer to $700,000. And about that time, I figured another way that I could make money from my own experiences, my own, I don't know how to word this one, but I went to a trappers convention, myself and a fellow by the name of Alvin Yates. And we really didn't like the way the convention was being run. So on the way home, we got this bright idea of, well, let's start our own. So we did. And we went out, and back in those days, there were 4,000 licensed trappers in the state of Maine. And we sent a flyer to every one of them. I do have use of a field beside my house now, but I didn't way back in those days. And we actually created a little bit of a Woodstock because the price of fur was going up. And there was a lot of interest, and when we mailed out those 4,000 flyers, that was, I remember what year that was. That was, maybe I don't remember, but well, the exact year I don't remember, but I do know the one this year was the 48th one. But I also took 2 years off for COVID, so it's been 50 years. And we actually started 2 things back then that were different that other trappers convention had not. And this will shock a few people. But the first thing we did was we started charging admission. The first trapping show we had, it was not the first one. We did 1 or 2 of them without charging admission. And the first one we did, we charged $1. And believe it or not, there were trappers that came and would not pay it, turned around and went home. Trappers find change hard to live with. But anyway, I do know the first 3 years that we did the New England Trappers Weekend, I lost money. The next 3 years in Alvin, because of that reason, decided to give it up. And he had more adventures to go out in life to do. Next 3 years, I broke even. And then after that, I kind of found the magic formula. It's almost like anybody else in business. Sometimes you have to pay your dues before you find out the right and the wrong things to do.
So this Trappers Weekend, which is currently known as New England's Trappers Weekend, that's where the NTA Northeast event is held. Currently is held in Bethel, Maine, behind your house or at your residence. Where did it start at?
You mean location?
Location-wise, where did it start?
Right there.
Right there. And then at some point it got moved.
Nope. What everybody's misled was both in the same year, back when fur boom was high, when prices were high and whatnot. It's almost like trapping. You go out and figure out where you're going to catch the most animals. Well, I can't remember. It was in the 80s. One night I woke up and I said, how can I confront more trappers? I said, bang, I'm going to go run a trappers convention in Pennsylvania. And believe it or not, I went out looking for a convention site. And I found Hughesville, Pennsylvania, and went down there and ran a convention down there for 4 years. And
so this is in addition to? Okay. I was always under the impression that it was the only event that you ran those years, and you had just used it at Hughesville and then moved it back. So this is an addition to your
What
weekend.
do you remember being, you said you went to that convention and you didn't like the way it was run. How was yours different than theirs at that time?
oh, that's a very good question. I thought I might have said it, but I don't think I did.
Other than the admission.
Right.
You mentioned the admission.
I did, and I started to say demos. And somebody has to prove me wrong, because I think we're the first ones to really use demos at a convention. The first ones to charge admission, the first ones to do demos. And we're one of the first ones to have a dance, start doing kids things and events that weren't trapping. Paul Grimshaw is a fellow that I trapped with for 20 years, a very, very well-known man in the fur business and lure business and whatnot. I still remember the first year he came to my event, and it was the first one, as a matter of fact. He pulled in and said, "This is it?" I said, "Oh, this is it." And we still laugh about as long as he was alive. But now I'm getting old. I kind of forgot the question.
No,
Just what you had done different. You
what
said
was
you
different?
Oh, yeah,
had
it's
the
different,
kids
yeah.
stuff. And
Now you mentioned Paul Grimshaw. Back in the 80s and 90s, the trappers that we hear about today in books, the famous trappers and things like that, who are some of the names that you remember going to your weekend doing demos or setting up that other people might recognize the name?
Oh, that list is quite long. There was a fellow that I don't know how he worded it, and I think he might be right. At least out in the country, there's probably been more well-known trappers at my convention than ever at that site. Just because it hasn't moved, it's stayed there for the last 50 years. But, and I'm going to forget somebody, and that's what...
No, you're fine. I just wanted
Russ
some.
Carmen's been there. Charlie Dobbins was there. The Leggett's were there. Bob Noonan, Kermit Stearns, Josh Phoenix, Ray Porter, Don Dudley, Byron Nelson. I'm going to use a few recent ones. Tommy Bryant.
I was going to say, better mention Tommy.
And I better say that because Tommy won't let me stay at his house. That's a bad joke. But one thing I love about Tommy is he tells the truth. You know, there's a lot of people, and I'm getting philosophical now, and I shouldn't do that maybe, but a lot of people that are making a false name on Facebook. But Tommy not only likes to talk on Facebook, but he backs up what he does, and he's doing it. Mm-hmm. You know, some more famous names, huh? Well, I'm going to change that subject just for a little bit, and I've forgotten, Lord knows how many of them, but I do think the percentages of well-known trappers have come to mind more so than any other. I have a picture that was taken, and I can't tell you what year, but I do know that in that picture there was Sam Levine for one, and just everybody that I just mentioned was in that picture.
So, what about? I'm just thinking of one off the top of my head that just recently passed. Slim Peterson. Had he ever been to your event?
Nope, that's one name that hadn't been there. That's sad too, because I would have liked to have met him. But on the other hand, I have had the opportunity to meet a big percentage and get to know them,
And see,
in a personal way, which makes it fun.
and I go to a lot of events, yours included, along with a lot of others, because I like to meet some of the older names that are no longer able to trap or no longer trapping like they used to for a living and things like that, because I want to get to know them. I've heard a lot about them. Slim Peterson was one I never got a chance to meet. I would have loved to have met. Charlie Dobbins I would have loved to have met. I'm kind of new to the scene, so I didn't see it, but I love hearing stories from people like you and Jim Comstock and people like that, and Ron Leggett, that can tell you stories about these legends that were in the trapping industry that a lot of us in the younger generation look up to. So I didn't get a chance to meet a lot of these people, but I go to these events to meet the current ones, because I want to get that info. I want to hear those stories before they're no longer able to give them up. So that's why I was wondering about the different people that have been to your events. I'm sure you've learned a lot and heard a lot of stories over the years from them.
One of my claims to fame is I think I've taken in trapping instructions for more people than anybody else in the United States of America, because everybody that sold fur to me had some great ideas, and I learned from them. Every time I did a trappers convention, I got to meet, and I am forgetting a tremendous amount of names of people that I was able to talk to and learn from. But buying fur, running conventions, and then I started running a few seminars with different people. I always said that the person that was going to learn the most at these seminars was me. One of the oddball things that people may or may not realize, even the people that give them may not realize this, but if a person goes out in front of a crowd and gives a demonstration on how to anything, everybody that's watching him is a critic, and the guy that's giving the demonstration can learn as much from these people that are watching it, especially the critics, because sometimes they have ideas that you never even thought of. And the old punchline is keep an open mind. I met a young man here at Micktoberfest last weekend. Orion Mustard is his name, and the thing I loved about him is he was there to learn and listen, which was a great thing, to be able to talk to a young light man like that and help him out a little bit, give him a guide to life.
Absolutely. I mean, for people who don't go to events or don't watch the demos at the events while they're there, they're really missing out, because there's some great instructors, there's some great trappers that are out there giving their knowledge. They're not getting paid for it. They're giving their knowledge and trying to help you learn, me learn. I attend a lot of different demos, and I'm pretty proficient at what I do, but I still attend demos, even if I know they don't catch as much as I do. I'll attend those demos because I feel like I can learn one thing. If I sit in that hour-long demo and I picked up one thing that they told in 10 seconds or 15 seconds that saves me time or helps me on my trap line, I feel like it was worth it. And I've yet to go to a demo where I didn't pick up something somewhere that I could put to use.
Another one of the things I forgot to mention about how I learned how to trap, and I've trapped with quite a few different, very, very good trappers. And one name I have to mention is Billy Combs, because I trapped with Bill. And even this young man that I spoke with this weekend about, a past weekend at Minktoberfest about how to learn how to trap was a quote that I got from Mr. Combs, and it's so true. He said, the boy's question was, how do I trap beavers and whatnot? And I said to the young man, let the beaver tell you how to. I said, study his habits, study where he walks, study what he does, He will show you where to set the trap, because beavers are a creature of habit, and they go in the same channel time after time. And let the beaver show you where to set the trap. Or let the animal observe. Observation is a big thing in trapping. There's no question about it.
So, all right. So, let's go timeline. So, we're up to, you're doing the New England Trappers Weekend. We're in the mid 80s at this point. I know you currently rent tents as a side business when you're not trapping during the fall. When did the tent business come into play and start up?
Well, you know what? The tent business is another one of those offshoots of being all in on trapping and the Trappers Convention, because I used to rent a tent to use at my Trappers Convention, and being a thrifty gentleman, I'm not going to use that cheap word, but thrifty, I got sick of paying for one, so I bought one. Then I had the bright idea of wondering if there's anybody out there that wanted to rent this. And before the summer was over, I owned 5 tents. And the great thing about the tent rental business is when trapping stops, the tent rental business, as far as the season goes, starts. And on the other end, it's the same thing, is when trapping stops, the tent rental starts. I don't know if I'm wording that right, but I think you got the gist of it. The timing is perfect.
When one starts, the other one stops.
It's like I tried to tell that gentleman the other day, the young man, become your own boss, then you can tell him, when you want to work, when you don't want to work, and learn that word no. No, I'm not going to fix your electrical work. I'm going trapping. And you know what? Your customers, and if you're good enough and conscientious enough, they'll still be there when you come back. I mean, no question.
All right. So you started in the tent business. You're doing that on the side. You're trapping. You're still buying fur today, correct?
Yep.
Still buying fur today. Still trapping today. Still doing tents today. If you can do it all over again, what would you do different?
Well, maybe not lie to my wife like I did to get her to come to Maine. Might make my life a little bit easier. But in reality, nothing. I mean, I love sayings. If all you have is money, you're pretty poor. Everybody dies, but not everybody lives. It's been a good life. I've made a living at what I enjoy doing. One of my favorite sayings about trapping is, everybody says, why do you work that hard? Why do you work that hard? And I said, well, and I mean this, the day trapping turns into work for me, I quit, because I'm not going to work that hard.
I understand. So, out of all your trapping trips, I've heard stories of New Mexico, I've heard stories of Maryland, I've heard different stories of different states. What is your most favorite and memorable trapping trip that you've been on outside of your home state?
Outside of that's a tough question to ask. But because of the love of the game, I call it, because of my addiction to trapping, I've been to 13 different states. I'm going to change it around a little bit, because I have trapped with a lot of really, really good people. And I was doing something similar to this. And the question that time was, who's the best person you ever trapped with? And I really didn't want to single anybody out, because I really couldn't. But, my answer was my dog. Because, and it's the truth too, if you think about it, dogs are so loyal and whatnot, but I didn't want to. Every trip I went on was an adventure. Every trip I went on was fun. To be truthful, not every trip was successful. It's the adventure. And if they were all successful and everything was roses it wouldn't be as much fun, or it wouldn't have been as much of a challenge.
Absolutely.
We still trap today. A lot of people that are all in, I call it, is because we enjoy the challenge. One of my things I love to say about one of my partners is Paul Grimshaw and I trapped together for 20 years. And after 20 years, neither one of us was ready to admit the other one knew anything. But the thing that kept us together was the love of the game. We both loved what we were doing, and that's what kept us going. And, it's like a marriage. If you truly love each other, you're going to live through the hard times and the this times and that time and that type of thing.
All right. So that's your most memorable. I understand that.
Well,
What
okay.
is your most favorite animal to trap right now?
I'm going to revert back to your other question.
Okay.
I loved going out west trapping canines because it was so absolutely much easier. I trapped in the desert, the San Simon Desert with J.P. Wilson, because you could drive right up to the set. You didn't have to walk. You could drive. If you couldn't hit the animal with your door, you were too far away from him. The dirt was like today, we pounded down through a few rocks today to set a few traps. Out there, it was all sand. If you
Wait
were
a
gonna-
minute now. Everybody says on the internet that all I have is easy dirt. What do you mean you were driving in hard dirt today and a few rocks? We don't have rocks here according to the internet.
If you go by everything that people say about you, you're in trouble. I've heard people say, boy, he's a nice guy. Well, they ought to get to know you. That's a bad joke. That's a bad joke. But no, today was not easy ground. I had times when I pounded and pounded and pounded and pounded. And, nope, absolutely today was not I guess that's why I loved going out there, was because of every day you looked up and there was sunshine. Every day. They hadn't had rain in 2 years. I mean, in Maine, when you're trapping, if you haven't had rain in 4 days, you feel lucky. But down there, it hadn't rained in 2 or 3 years. So weather, a lot of animals. I was wanted there. Trapping on a place where they want you means a whole lot. That was a lot of fun for me. The first time I went to North Carolina trapping, I was allowed to set traps on a beaver dam, whereas in Maine, that was a no-no. You couldn't do that. And down there, it was like, I don't know, giving candy to a kid, let's just call it. And adventures. Each and every one of these states had different laws, different animal populations. One of the questions, every time I hear this question at a trappers convention, what about location? What about location? I always want to raise my hand and say, location is not about where in the field or which side of the brook or how deep's the water. Location, if you want to catch a lot of animals, it's which county or which state do you want to be in. Then the things that play a role in that catch is weather, laws, and like I've already said, animal population. And I keep thinking of oddball things to say. But it's like I told that young man the other day, that you want to have a wife that allows you to do that. And I don't give my wife enough credit for that. And I'm going to say that right now. And a job that allows you to do that. And a desire to want to do that. I hear the story all the time. I'm going to go trapping when I retire. I'm going to go trapping when I retire. Well, most of the time that doesn't happen. If they really want to go trapping, they got to find a way to do it the year they say that. None of us are getting there. It's a proven fact. None of us are ever getting any younger. Oh, and if you like to trap, do it now. It's another one of those I'm a gunner people, I call them. I'm a gonna do this, I'm a gonna do that.
So, as far as, we've got your favorite animal to trap. Let's answer that question.
My favorite animal to trap.
What is your most favorite animal to trap? If you trapped one animal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One animal the rest of my life. It would probably be beaver for a lot of reasons. State of Maine, we have a lot of them. There's always going to be beaver to trap because beavers are a problem to many people. They flood their land. They're visible, so people know when there is a problem. But on the other hand, I don't think there's any animal that you trap that is more work than a beaver. I've stolen a lot of one-liners off of other trappers that I've talked to over the years, but you never carry a beaver downhill. It's always uphill, which, going back to my baseball days, I actually knew Ted Williams a little bit. And I overheard him say once, he hit a double and he was on second base. He looked to home plate and it looked like a long ways to go. Well, now I trap a beaver and I can see my truck within sight and it looks like a long ways to go. So maybe, maybe my career's winding down. And, in the fall of the year, I love to trap fox and coyotes. And, when I was a kid, I just loved to trap muskrats. It's everybody in the world calls me up as a fur bar and says, what should I trap this year? What should I trap? And they mean monetarily. And I give them all the same answer. Trap the animal you like to trap and enjoy the most. Because that's going to be your biggest reward is, the memories of it. We get paid in a lot of ways. We get paid by breathing fresh air. We get paid by good, solid physical exercise, being outdoors, interacting with nature. That's your true payment. It's an instinct for man to want to be a predator, whether anybody wants to believe it or not. And you get to go out and indulge in that instinct. And that's just not a man thing either, Women's desire is not always diamond rings and fancy cars and stuff. I should have said skirts, but there's a lot. The new trend right now is for a lot of ladies to go out and want to trap, and that's a great thing. It really is. You get more people involved and whatnot. So the favorite animal, and I keep thinking about things to talk about and say is, I love to trap otters in the spring. I went out and tried mink, and I enjoyed it, but I found out in my case where I live, it was a waiting game, and I really didn't like the waiting game. I loved animals that I knew I could catch, and it wouldn't take too long, so I call that instant gratification. So that was fun. The trapper that I really respect is not just the canine trapper. It's not just the beaver trapper. It's not just the mink or the otter or the skunk or the fisher or the marten. It's the guys that I know that can trap everything. And what amazes me, because I cannot do it, is some guys can trap them all at the same time when the laws allow it. If I ever tried to do that, my truck would look like a junkyard. I really, and I know those guys, and one of my pet peeves, and I'd love to get it out there, one of my pet peeves is the canine trapper gets an awful lot of credit for what he does. But show me the guy that catches the 100 mink in the state of Maine, and he's a trapper. Show me the guy that catches 100 otter, and he's a tremendous otter trapper. And the funny part about numbers doesn't always tell the true story. Because some of these states I've trapped in, if you catch 50 coyotes, you're a coyote trapper. And you really have to work at it. On and on and on. I think the winner of the so-called fame and fortune is the trapper that's having the most fun.
Absolutely, that means a lot. I have people that ask me a lot of times is, how do you do it? How do you trap full-time 6, 7, 8 months out of the year wide open, or even really 12 months out of the year? And I tell them, I said, it's always, I change up. I trap canines for 3 or 4 months, and then I've got to switch over to beaver and things like that because the fun comes back into it. And when the fun comes back into it, the ambition, the drive, all that stuff happens with the fun. And then when it's springtime, it's time to hang up the footholds or the beaver traps, and it's time to go to turtles. I'm still trapping it gets fun. I get burnt out on an animal and it's not fun anymore. So I switch to something else, and then all of a sudden it's like Christmas all over again. It just starts back up. So I think that you touched on probably one of the most important things is to keep it fun.
You know what Tommy just said was absolutely true. It's diversification. I can't imagine. Well, the one I always use is the poor guy that stands out beside the road is directing traffic. I just can't imagine doing that same exact thing all day long, your whole life. And you know, there is such a variety in trapping. And not each and every animal, but even like beaver. There's little tiny brooks, there's bigger brooks, there's streams, there's ponds, there's rivers, there's soft, slow water, there's swift water, there's trapping them with a leg hold, trapping them with a snare, trapping them with a coney bear. They're all different. It's just like canine trapping or mink trapping, you know. Everyone varies, and every one of them has 3 or 4 different ways to do it and variations of ways to do it to keep you intrigued. So, you know, like, and not everybody has the want or the desire to do it that way. And one of my other pet peeves I've always had was the guy that sets 5 traps should not make fun of the guy that sets 100 traps. And the guy that sets 100 traps should not make fun of the guy that sets 5.
Yeah.
It's you know, the guy that wins, once again, is the guy that had the most fun.
Right. All right. So before we wrap this up, one last question. For a new trapper getting started, or somebody wanting to do a full, go into trapping full time, what would be your advice to them?
That's a funny question because that was almost the same exact question. And his name is Orion Mustard. That's not a make-up name. That's his real name. And he's going to electrical school right now. And he hinted that he'd like to be a professional trapper. And I told him, I said, you go to electrician school, you get yourself a job, you become your own boss, then you can dictate when you work and when you don't work, and you take your vacations and your free time, and that's when you make a trapping push. So in other words, you have a job that kind of supplements your income. Or animal damage control nowadays is what trapping is shifting to get paid to catch these animals. And not to mention electricians again, but don't be afraid to charge, and don't undervalue yourself, because what's an electrician get an hour? What's a plumber get an hour? What's a carpenter get an hour? It's, you know, it's astronomical. They get $80, $90, $100 an hour. So don't be afraid to charge when you go out, because you are a professional. You are. Sometimes I'm short on words, but you know what you do.
You're worth your value.
You're worth your value. That's a great way to word that. And you know the other one, and I'm going to brag right now, the 3 people I was with today, Tommy, Sarah, and and Jeff, all 3 of them have got the 2 things that I pushed if you really want to trap. They have a job that allows them to do it, and they have a wife and a husband. I'm not going to say partner because that might lead to other issues, but to allow them to do it. So that's a necessity. I mean, you got to create your own situation to trap. You know, if you want to go professional, and I hate to say it this way, but it's turned into an animal damage control thing, and you have to be willing to pay, and don't undervalue yourself.
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and give us the real Neil Olson, the one that a lot of people don't get to see at conventions. They see the joking Neil or the running around like a chicken with his head cut off Neil, especially if they're at your weekend. You always got something going on. But I really appreciate sitting down and letting everybody get in touch with the Neil Olson that I know that I've got to meet and listen to on the telephone, late night conversations. Sometimes
or early mornings.
Early mornings. He'll call and we'll talk sometimes. We've talked for as much as 2 hours on the telephone before. Just different things. It leads from one thing to the next. And I've learned a lot from him. I've learned a lot about his life and his past, and I just thought it would be interesting to share with a lot of people out there, because I'm the same person that I love to hear stories about the legends of the past. And not saying it's in the past that you're not still out there trapping and doing what you love to do and still making that name, but I just wanted everybody else to hear it before you got to the point that you didn't want to share it. You got mad at us and didn't want to share it.
Tell the truth. You wanted to make sure I did it before I couldn't do it. One of the, I don't know if this is a good way to end this or not, but one of the compliments I have received lately is at least two people have said the same thing, that I am an old Tommy Bryant, and Tommy Bryant is a young Neil Olson. And I took that as it almost makes me want to cry right now because I think it's true. He needs to go.
I wouldn't put that on Neil. Neil's forgot more than I'll ever learn, so I doubt I wouldn't put that on Neil. But I appreciate you taking the time. Yep. We're going to end it on that note, and hope everybody enjoys our conversation as we had it tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Neil. I've enjoyed I've enjoyed trapping with you all day today, and I look forward to the next couple days. And I really saw your heart in this interview tonight, and your passion for your family, and the support and the love that they have given you through the years to be in this industry. And one thing I learned from you today on the trap line was you're always curious. And you're always analyzing, and you're always wondering, and you're always just very curious about what you're doing. And that proves to me that there's always something to learn and learn from and wonder about. So I'm really looking forward to spending the next couple days with you. And like Tommy, thank you again for sitting down with us tonight and sharing your story. So,
well, going out today on the trap line, let me say the same thing to all the people we're with today. And the thing that was pretty clear to me today was all four of us are all in. It's like
that's
that
right.
card game, we're all in.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's been a pleasure. People don't sit down and just talk about trapping enough. The old Trappers Conventions used to be that way, according to Paul Grimshaw. E.J. Daly was there. He might have been sipping some coffee brandy, but telling stories, and people would sit there and listen to him. And we ought to do that more.
I agree. All right. Thanks again.